Okay.
So welcome everybody. My name is Bärbel Erik. I'm from Land and Water Conservation Department and helping to moderate this workshop. Yeah, I would like to go over, first of all, welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. And we'll be going over just a couple guidelines for the Zoom format. There is a chat function that you see on the bottom of your, or on your Zoom controls. And you can use that chat function throughout the presentations to ask any question, and we will be addressing these questions at the end of the presentation. There may also be time for verbal questions, and for whatever reason your Zoom format doesn't allow for the use of the chat function. However, if you can, please use the chat function, and then we'll go through the questions as they come up. We will keep everybody muted throughout the presentation time. With that, I would like to first introduce Michelle Sadauskas, our Oneida County conservationist, to lead us through this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Bärbel. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks,
Yep.
gang. I want to say thank you to everyone that is in attendance. We're so happy to see the great group and that there is interest in this topic in Oneida County. As Bärbel said, my name is Michelle Sadauskas, and I am the Oneida County conservationist and have been in that position since 2016. Oneida County does a heck of a lot of work with our lakes. As a group with a DNR, Land and Water, County, a lot of nonprofits in the area. Our own department itself has done a tremendous amount of work with AIS in controlling and managing that. We work a lot with volunteers for getting water quality data, and we do a lot of work with lakeshore restoration. So we have done a bunch of work on lakes out there. Conversely, we haven't done a heck of a lot of work on our lakes and streams in Oneida County, just as a county department out of our office. Not to say other groups have not been doing some focus work over there. So it was something that we definitely wanted to do a little bit more of into the future. And we had just gotten done with our land and water resource management plan. And that was one of the priorities that was in there. Additionally, and I do want to read you this out of our grant application to the DNR when we applied for the stream crossing grant back in 2019 now. And just to kind of give you a little bit of backdrop, I'm not going to steal Joanne's thunder coming up. Joanne has done all the field work, done all the analyzing of the data, has worked with the Michigan DNR and the Wisconsin DNR. So I just want to give just a little bit of a snippet of the paragraph that I put in there for a problem statement for our grant application to kind of have you know where we kind of came from with this. In 2016, Ashland County experienced heavy rainfall amounts of 8 to 12 inches in just a few hours. The Associated Press reported all roads into Mellon, Wisconsin were closed this morning from washouts and bridges gone. In 2018, an even larger storm deposited 12 to 14 inches of water onto the landscape. Stream crossings, culverts, and bridges struggled to handle the capacity of water moving through them. Those that were too small or aligned incorrectly were some of the first to be washed away, creating environmental damage to the stream and watershed, costing towns thousands of dollars to repair, and creating public safety issues. The question that started to surface in our department was, could this happen in Oneida County? And an even better question developed, could we prevent this from happening in our county? And that is kind of where we started from. We haven't been doing a lot of stream work. This was definitely kind of a poke in the side to kind of say, hey, how do our stream crossings look? Do we know where they're at? How many that we have? Do we know what type of shape they're in? And I think the best little sentence moving forward out of this application was prevention is key. And we wanted to try to be ahead of the curveball rather than behind it, as Ashland was put in that predicament with the rainfall totals that they saw back in 2016 and 2018. So that was a little bit of backdrop for everyone. I will let Joanne take it from here. She's got a lot of great data to show. It was quite fascinating to hear her reports over the summer with the crossings that she was the visiting and the data coming through. So I know she's done a lot of hard work, and I'm looking forward to this presentation just as much as many of you are. So Joanne, you've got the stage.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm just gonna move us a little to the somewhere. We'll probably be in the way.
Hey, Joanne, if you could just hit your display settings there, we've got the split screen.
You do?
Yep. So if you go up to display settings and change it over to swap screens.
Is that better? No?
Nope, not yet.
I think you haven't fully clicked it.
Try it one more time.
Oh boy, I'm going back and forth between the two.
Yep, go ahead and click that. Click the swap presenter view. Did you click on that actually?
Swap, yep, that's what I'm doing. It worked before. How about the duplicate slideshow?
Sure, try it.
How about that? Nope,
Nope.
no, it's gone.
That's okay. I was going to say, why don't you hop out and try it again?
All right. All right. Sorry, everybody.
Okay, we have full screen.
Okay,
good.
Good. Okay, sorry about that. It worked during our test, and then of course it didn't work when we needed it to. Okay, so I want to say thank you everyone for your time and your interest in this project. I'm Joanne Lund. I did the stream crossing surveys last summer in 2020. So we were able to complete 105 surveys in Oneida County in 6 towns. And the surveys that we were able to complete were part of a bigger study, the Great Lakes Stream Crossing Inventory. And that's ongoing in upper and lower Michigan and northern Wisconsin. So the protocol to conduct the surveys was developed and tested by various organizations, the Michigan and Wisconsin DNR, U.S. Forest Service, Trout Unlimited, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Huron Pines, Conservation Resource Alliance, Michigan Tech, and various road commissions. So why do it? In other words, what were our goals? They were to prevent and or minimize environmental damage at roadway stream crossings, to reduce public safety issues, to be able to prioritize certain culverts that had some issues within those 6 townships. We also wanted to provide information to infrastructure managers and other responsible parties so that they could build more resilient and environmentally friendly stream crossings. And at the end, we will provide some information on cost sharing opportunities. So let's just talk about what the ideal crossing would look like. It would mimic the natural stream as much as possible. So what you'd really like to see is a river flowing by completely unimpeded or unaltered with a road over the top of it. It needs to allow water and debris to flow downstream unimpeded. It needs to allow aquatic organisms to move up and downstream as their life cycles require, and also allow high volumes of water to move downstream after heavy rainfall events. Okay, so how was it done? We used detailed maps at the DNR Surface Water Viewer to locate crossings in the target towns. Made a list of those and then just planned a schedule to visit those sites. So this shows a map of the crossings that for which we completed a survey in the summer and fall of 2020. They were located in the towns of Hazelhurst, Lake Tomahawk, Little Rice, Lynne, Minocqua, and Woodruff. The yellow dots are marking the location of culverts that were surveyed. The red squares are bridges, and this pink one is the dam at the Willow Flowage. So I want to talk about how we conducted these surveys, so you know what went on there. We took photographs of the site, both upstream and downstream, photos of the structure, photos of the roadway approach, both left and right. And then we did a variety of measurements. I used this flow probe to measure stream flow velocity. We did water depth measurements at the inlet and outlet. This laser rangefinder was used to measure bank and roadway slope as well as longer distances. And I used this other laser measuring device for shorter distances of like 30 feet or less. We looked over the structure, did a visual condition assessment, and did measurements on the structure. We measured buried depth of the structure, and this is the distance from the top of the structure to the road surface. This is directly correlated with the water depth in the structure, and that's why that's important. We looked for any visible signs of erosion within 50 feet of the crossing and did measurements and took photographs if there was any, and various other things I'll talk about in a little bit. Here is a photo of the opening page of a survey application that was developed to conduct these surveys. So I had a tablet with me in the field and entered data immediately electronically. And then when a survey was completed, you could upload it to a database, and it's immediately available to the public or anyone who wants to look at it. So that was pretty slick, I thought. So to start, I wanted to just kind of do an overview of the some different conditions that we observed. Here is a structure in Hazelhurst. It has 3 pipe arches. The 2 outer structures are partially obstructed, and this one on the left was partially crushed. Another really common problem was erosion around the ends of the structure. You can see here that there's definitely material washing into the waterway in both of these photos. Even though this one has some erosion control fabric, it's still, the gravel here is reaching the waterway. We also saw erosion due to heavy rainfall events, due to runoff. So here's an example in Little Rice of a gully along the shoulder of the road. And the material was washing into the stream. Here's an example in Hazelhurst where the stream bank was eroding into the waterway. This is an example of a structure that has insufficient buried depth, and that what that result is that there's insufficient water depth in the structure. There was also no erosion control measure around it, so there was a lot of material washing into the waterway. This is an example of a perched structure. So that means that the downstream end is elevated above the water level, such that the water cascades as it moves downstream. And this condition causes a 100% barrier to fish and other organism passage back upstream. So when a structure is perched, it's automatically a barrier issue. This also had some condition issues. It was rusted, and there were a few spots where it was rusted through. Here's an example of a crossing that had no issue. Excuse me a minute. Okay, so it's a nice wide structure. It has nice depth of water moving through with a nice slow current, and plenty of effective erosion control around it. Plus the width of the structure is adequate for the stream what it is serving. Here's a structure bridge that has incurred some damage, so perhaps that should be monitored. Another example of a culvert with erosion occurring around the structure. The buried depth is below standard. You can see that it's perched. The water is cascading maybe 6 inches there. And the structure is undersized for the width of the waterway it's serving. Here's an example of some beaver dams that were impeding flowage. In Lynne, there were quite a few beaver dams. So this is an obvious flowage issue. It can lead to flooding and heavy rainfall events. And this is another picture of the same site showing that the structure is undersized for the waterway. And you can see that gravel is washing down the bank into the stream here. Another example of perched structures. So the downstream end is elevated above the water surface. And these two structures, even though there's 2 of them, they're still both undersized for the stream that they're serving. This was a really interesting crossing. It had 6 structures in place. There were 2 on this end that were almost completely submerged or almost completely submerged. And I just had to wonder if they were placed maybe during when we were in drought conditions some years back. And then there were 2 other structures here that were also perched. And they're rather small for the waterway. And then there were 2 larger structures off to the left that were also perched. And altogether, these 6 structures are, it's inadequate width for the stream they're serving. While we were there, we kept an eye out for any non-native species or invasive plant species we might see. Here on Lake Nokomis, there were Chinese mystery snails present. And a really common roadside invasive plant is common tansy. It has these feathery, almost fern-like leaves and these bright yellow button-like flowers. And it tends to just take over roadsides and crowd out the native flowering plants. So when we were looking at assessing a crossing, we looked at 3 major factors, so that was our focus. Is the crossing a barrier to fish and other aquatic organisms? And this is referred to as passability. So when I say barrier, or it's really talking about passability and vice versa, they're kind of the same thing. We visually examined the condition of the structure. So we assessed structural integrity. And then we looked for any erosion that was occurring within 50 feet of the crossing and did some measurements on that. So now I want to take a closer look at these three factors. So let's first talk about passability. And again, this is, are fish and other aquatic organisms able to cross a roadway stream intersection, and they need to be able to move both upstream and downstream as their life cycles may require. Let's look at this diagram in the upper right. The inlets and outlets should be positioned at or below the level of the stream bank so that there's sufficient water depth in the structure. The gradient of the structure should parallel that of the stream bank. And this says the width of the structure is equal to the average stream bed. We were looking for the width of the structure to be at least half as wide as the average width of the stream bed. People have done studies to determine what the limiting factors are, especially in regards to fish being able to move back and forth across stream crossing. And so the limiting factors that we looked at are a water depth of at least 6 inches, water flow velocity of less than 3 feet per second. Fish require a presence of a natural substrate in the structure and a structure length of less than 30 feet. And this is because fish can swim quickly for a short distance, but they can't maintain it. It's like sprinting. And it's been found that most fish species cannot maintain a fast speed longer than 30 feet. So now I want to talk about how we assess the structural condition. The survey application had us place the condition of the structure in one of these 8 categories. And they ranged from a structure like this in the upper left that was a brand new structure. So that would be in this category, and then ranging all the way down to something like this, which has suffered abrasion and corrosion over almost half of its surface. So that would be in one of these 2 categories at the bottom. And then looking at erosion, erosion is really important because there are really major impacts on the waterway and the organisms living in it. Erosion can disrupt a fish ability to find food items. It decreases dissolved oxygen levels. It causes abrasion both to the structure and also fine particles can cause abrasions on fish gills, which can lead to infection. The material being carried in the stream can fill in spawning areas, smother aquatic plants, and increase water temperature. So where erosion was occurring, we made various measurements to evaluate the extent of that erosion. And as these measurements were entered into the survey application, an annual estimate of erosion in tons per year was calculated by the application using this universal soil loss equation. So that's how we did the survey. Now let's look at what we found doing the surveys. We'll first do an overview of all 105 sites. Then we'll move to looking at results by town, And again, these are the 6 towns that for which we completed surveys in 2020. And then finally, we'll look at sites that were considered priority sites based on various condition issues. So regarding passability at all 105 sites, we found that 15% created a 100% barrier to fish and aquatic organism passage. 7.6% were not a barrier. 37% posed a barrier at high water flows, and 35% created a barrier at most flows, and this is like a sort of an average flow. Regarding structural condition at all crossings, generally the condition of the structures was good. We just had a few in these more severely deteriorated or majorly deteriorated categories. Moving to the town of Lynne, we completed 33 crossing surveys. Lynne is in the southwest corner of Oneida County, and here's a higher resolution map showing those specific sites. In the town of Lynne, 3% created a 100% barrier to passage, 12% were not a barrier, 54% posed a barrier at high flows, and 21% a barrier at most flows. Looking at structural condition overall in the town of Lynne, again, most of them were in pretty good shape. We just had this less than a handful with more major or severe deterioration. Next, we'll talk about the town of Little Rice, where we completed 32 surveys. Little Rice is just to the east of Lynne, and here's a higher resolution map of those sites. Passability in the town of Little Rice, 15% of crossings posed a 100% barrier. A little over 9% were not a barrier, 43% a barrier at high flows, and 31% a barrier at most flows. Looking at structural condition in Little Rice, again, most were in fairly good shape. There was just this one with major deterioration. In Minocqua, 26 surveys were completed. Minocqua being located in the upper northwest corner of Oneida County. Here's a higher resolution map of those sites. In Minocqua, almost 27% posed a 100% barrier to fish and aquatic organism passage. About 4% were not a barrier. 7% were a barrier at high flows, and over half of them were a barrier at most or your average flows. In Minocqua, the structural condition was fairly good. There were just some with like moderate to major condition issues. Moving to the town of Hazelhurst, there were 7 surveys completed. Here's a higher resolution map of those locations. Passability in the town of Hazelhurst, 57% posed a barrier at most flows and almost 43% a barrier at high flows. Structural condition was overall pretty good. There were just these 3 with moderate to major deterioration. In the town of Woodruff, there were 5 surveys completed. And this is a higher resolution map showing those locations. Okay, in the town of Woodruff, since there were only 5, this 40% is represented by 2 crossings. So 2 posed a barrier 100% of the time. One crossing was a barrier at high flows and 2 others a barrier at most flows. Structural condition was pretty good, nothing in the more severe categories, but this one should perhaps be monitored. And last but not least, in the town of Lake Tomahawk, well, the lowest number, I guess, in the town of Lake Tomahawk, we did surveys at 2 sites located here between Bearskin Lake and Birch Lake. So one of these created a barrier 100% of the time, and one was a barrier at high flows. There was no real issue with those 2 structures. They were both in good shape. So now I would like to turn our attention toward those sites that were classified as priority sites based on various issues. So we'll first take a look at these 15% that were assessed as priority sites based on the fact that they posed a 100% barrier to fish and aquatic organism passage. So this is a table of the sites represented by that 15%, the specific sites. Here's the town, here's the waterway and the road crossing. And what we're going to focus on here is, I mentioned these earlier when we talked about passability, the structure length greater than 30 feet, a water depth of less than 6 inches is an issue, lack of substrate, water velocity greater than 3 feet per second. This constriction ratio is the ratio of the structure width over the average stream width. And so if the structure is half as wide as the stream bed, then it gives a value of 0.5. So anything less than that is an issue. Whether a structure is perched or not, as I said, it poses an automatic barrier to fish passage. And the scour pool is a function of the water velocity. So that's at the downstream end where the water exits the structure. If it's moving really fast, it scours away a deeper pool at that end. So let's just take a few, look at a couple of these. So looking at this one, Lake Tomahawk, the structure length was okay, there was no issue. Water depth was okay. There was substrate in the structure, so that was not an issue. The water velocity was greater than 3 feet per second, so that was something that led to it being placed in the priority category. And the size of the structure was insufficient, so that's another reason why it was placed in a priority category. Let's look at one more. Where the Tomahawk River in Minocqua crosses Camp 9 Road. The structure length was greater than 30 feet, so that's an issue. Water depth was not an issue. Lack of substrate in the structure was an issue. Water velocity greater than 3 feet per second, yes, it was. So that causes barrier problems. The structure was insufficient in size, and there was a scour pool. So we can look at these, anything in red was a contributing factor to causing the structure to be assessed as a priority structure or crossing. Oh, and also I neglected to mention that some of the streams that we surveyed were classified trout streams, and those are marked with a trout. So From here, I want to move on to our priority crossings due to structural condition issues. We decided to include in our priority group those structures in the 4 more severely deteriorated categories. So these 4 categories. The next slide will show, or this, yeah, will show a table of those individual sites. So these again are priority crossings due to structural condition issues. And when we were examining the structure, we looked for whether or not it was plugged and to what degree. Was it crushed and to what degree? Was it rusted through? And then the general condition category it was placed in. So let's look at a few of these. In Minocqua, where the Willow River crosses Price County Road, there was a fair amount of the structure was plugged, and even more of it was crushed, and that those 2 factors led to them being placed in our priority group. One more, let's find one here. Okay, in Lynne, where Swamsauger Road crosses Flowage Road, there was part of the structure was plugged, part of it was crushed, and it was rusted through. So you can just look at, you can identify the specific reasons why it was placed in the priority category. And again, the streams that were classified trout streams are marked with a trout. And moving on to priority crossings due to erosion issues. There's no universally accepted value beyond which, it's considered an issue. So we chose value exceeding 2 tons per year. And so we really only need to look at this total annual erosion category. When we chose exceeding 2 tons per year as our priority group, it left us with 13 priority sites. And they're listed here as in the other tables. And again, the classified trout streams are marked with a trout. So in summary, we were able to complete crossings in 6 of 20 towns in Oneida County, and that comprises 30% of the towns. It's important to remember that when we're looking at individual sites, actually the effects of each individual culvert or crossing in a watershed affects the whole watershed. So the effects of each one is cumulative. Our optimal goal would be to maximize connectivity within a basin. And so we want to minimize our environmental impact when installing a crossing while minimizing cost. And it's our sincere hope that this data from on-the-ground surveys can be useful to infrastructure managers when they're looking at allocating funds and choosing priority crossings. So looking ahead, we're happy to be able to tell you that we have received funding from the DNR to continue these surveys in the 2021 season, and our target towns will be Crescent, Enterprise, Monaco, Pelican, Peel, and Shepke. So the data from all of these surveys is available to anyone who's interested at this Michigan DNR managed data hub site for the Great Lakes Stream Crossing Inventory. So if you go to the site and you're just zoom in on your area find a particular crossing and click on it, and there's a link to all the data from the survey. So you can see everything, all the measurements and the photos too. And then we also have on our Oneida County website, under the Land and Water Mapping tab, we have, again, you can find a crossing on our map, click on it, and it links to the data on the Michigan DNR site. So either one of those works to look anything up that you're interested in. And I just want to mention a few of my source materials. This paper is one, there are probably others, but it's one that did the work to identify those limiting factors to fish passability. The second one discusses the importance of these on the ground field survey measurements to aquatic ecosystem connectivity. This is a nice, useful little brochure that talks about installing and designing fish-friendly culverts, ecologically sound culverts. And this was a study similar to the one that I did, or that we did in the Manitowish Headwaters area. And now I'm going to come back to this slide in case anyone wants to copy down those addresses, and I'll take any questions, or I'll try to.
Hi, Joanne, thank you. There's some questions. I'm wondering, do you want to leave the page up in screen share to have these sources available? Otherwise, if you stop the screen share, you'll be more visible in reference to interacting.
I don't know. You can. I'm still on the. I'm still there, right at the bottom. Either way, you want me to stop it?
It's up to you.
Okay, I will stop it.
I'm
still, yeah.
So we have a question here that is addressing, I'm gonna just read it because it's pretty. I would guess most structures are designed to accept higher than normal flow to avoid infrastructure damage during high flow events. Was the survey and analysis designed to account for that? Are designs different based on stream species? For example, spring spawners have a typically high flow versus fall spawners with a lower flow?
That's the question. Incomplete?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, you know, I don't do any kind of designing of structures. This is something you would be better off asking maybe DNR employees. I just went and did measurements, so I would say overall though, my impression is that the structures were largely undersized for the stream they were servicing. But I don't do any, I'm not an engineer, I don't do any designing of structures. So I don't really feel like I can answer that.
I'll jump in here just a little bit on that too, Joanne, just to add
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
I think, you know, I don't have a ton of experience. This is a little new for us too, but working with our engineer that we work on cost share projects through the county, I think we tend to see, and there, I know we have DNR staff in the audience here. I think we tend to see culverts undersized. And I think I would totally agree with Joanne with that. Oftentimes I don't think there is a lot of looking at flooding cycles or 10-year floods or 50-year floods or something like that. I can't speak to that exactly, but it does seem we see the undersized happening quite a bit. And I do know from a design perspective, if we have cost share funds going in through the county, there are specs that we have to hit. So they're definitely designed a little bit more robust than in some other situations. That's just my add-on
Yeah, okay.
onto that.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So this is Kita, and
Hi, Keita.
Kita in Vilas County, and I do the same thing that Joanne does with the surveys. With the projects we've worked on, like you have Michelle with our engineer, she does look at those. She does run those equations for like 100-year floods to make sure that the pipe is large enough for those that they understand. So usually when we're installing them, we're looking at those. I have to say that in my experience, sometimes the towns, especially because their budgets are restricted, are looking at the smallest pipe that they can put in,
Right.
which unfortunately, as some of the folks who we've been taking classes with or workshops with have shown that over time, if you put a really small pipe in and you're having to replace it every 20 years versus putting in the adequately sized pipe to handle 100-year floods and whatnot, and having that last for 75 to 100 years, you're actually, it's actually costing you more money to go with that small pipe.
Yeah, true. Thank you, Keita.
Yeah, there was a question why you chose half of the width of the stream as your cutoff for the acceptable.
Again, the application did that automatically, and it was based on those studies of passability in regard to fish species. So it was based on studies. And again, I think engineers or maybe some of our DNR participants would be able to answer that better than I can.
Yeah, we have a couple comments here. One, let's see, and nothing is addressing that directly. And maybe one of the DNR staff can pipe in via the chat. I'm gonna just read the next question for now.
Okay, okay.
Did you survey any crossings that were at inlets, outlets of lakes? If so, is there a way to assess or note whether the culvert is causing ponding?
Causing ponding, the culvert. I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah.
Joanne, I think maybe the first part, if you handle, that might help get you to the second part.
Yeah,
which
okay,
was,
there were.
did you survey any crossings that were at inlets, outlets of lakes?
Maybe a few. I remember one. But it wasn't close enough that, you know, the stream was still moving through the culvert and continued on a couple 100 feet at least before entering the lake. It was at Lake Killarney.
Okay.
So I'm not sure, you know, if I understand the rest of that question. Maybe somebody can clarify in the chat.
Yeah, maybe the person who's asking, Scott Van Agren, do you want to pipe in to explain what you're asking?
Sure, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, hi, Scott.
Yes.
Hi, Joanne. I guess I'm just asking if there's any way for you to note on your survey form whether water's backing up because of the culvert.
Oh. Still, I don't know what you mean by a culvert.
I think Joanne,
Oh, I was thinking cul-de-sac. Sorry. Okay. I was thinking cul-de-sac. Okay, so is there a way for me to note? I mean, there are general notes at the end, so I could you know, if I saw something like that happening, I could make notes of it. But it's not specifically in the questions.
Well, and I think you would see it too if the water was, you know, so high that the pipe was
Right.
almost full or something like
Yeah.
that.
I do remember a few sites where, where the water was almost up to the road on both sides and the cul-de-sac was underwater. Or there I go again, cul-de-sac. The culvert was underwater. And I did make notes about that and took photos. So it's in there. I don't know, you know, so if people looked up that crossing, they would see, and it would be a priority crossing.
Scott,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Scott, I'm sorry.
that helps. I guess I recognize that mostly we're looking for, you know, fish passability,
Mm-hmm.
and like these are stream crossings largely. But I guess that the DNR were also considered, or I should say concerned, if like what you just stated, if the water's above the culvert, if it's causing like a dam effect upstream.
So
And,
I
and it's a
mean,
different kind of concern, but we could maybe look at your notes to
Yeah.
get at that.
yeah, what I could do moving forward, if you wish, is if I ran into that, I could contact someone. You know, if that's a more causing more severe issues. Would that be helpful? I have been working with John Simonson. He was unable to join us this morning, but I could reach out to him if I run into something that seems more urgent.
Joanne, I've got a thought to throw in here too. I know we're still working with our land information office on color coding these for priority.
Yeah.
That could be something, Scott, that we could work in, not in the general sense of the big survey that's dropping into a national holding house or clearing house, but that might be something that we could try to work out with our land info, with prioritizing or connecting up with the DNR with those particular sites.
That's true.
This is Alan Van Ralt. Could I ask a question? I'm trying to do a chat, but for some reason I can type it, but I can't seem to share it.
Oh,
Would it be possible to share the PowerPoint presentation with the Conservation Department and they could email it to those participants who are here today? This is something, for example, that I would like to share with both the town of Little Rice, since I represent them on the county board, and I'd also like to share with the Forestry Department. We had an issue with an unauthorized bridge replacement over a trout stream on the snowmobile trail, and this is something the whole committee should be aware of. You know, not just the bridge replacement, but definitely the survey that you've done, so they can understand the importance of those trout streams.
I believe we're going to post the PowerPoint on our website along with a recording of this town hall meeting. Is that true,
And
Michelle? Yeah, okay.
And you will share the link then, so with Michelle, so she can email it to the participants?
Yep, she's shaking her
Thank
head,
you.
yes.
Great,
Also,
thank you.
Alan, our plan also is to have, and Joanne did a fabulous job with the slides. I mean, they speak for themselves, but our plan was also to reach out to each town that was involved in this survey this past summer and give them a short summary, which is basically going to look like the slides, but maybe just a little narrative to it. So we do have that in the works for the towns as well. So we'll definitely make sure we get links, and we'll talk with you, Alan, a little bit more, but we'll make sure the towns get connected right up tight with this too.
Yeah,
Great, thank you, Michelle and Joanne.
It's really important to us that, we would really appreciate it if towns did make use of this information. That's the whole point, really. So thank you for your interest.
Yeah, are there any more questions? Here, there's one. Has
Okay.
Trout Unlimited shown any interest in partnering with fixing some of these issues?
Well, I'm not sure about fixing issues. They did provide me with one of their interns for part of the summer to help with surveys. But I don't know if they, if they actually have, what their capacity on renovation or remediation is. Do they do that kind of work? Michelle, do you know?
Yeah, they'll be involved with, I'm not sure about necessarily in Oneida County, but I know they have helped out other counties with stream crossings. So that definitely might be an
Mhm.
opportunity in the future. But I can discuss that a bit more with the cost sharing
Mhm. Okay.
monies and just when we finish up questions here. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, great.
Bear
Are
Bell,
there
did you?
any more?
Bearbell, do you mind reading the one comment that we did get through chat, just so everybody sees it, about the underside culverts, please?
Sure. Sean Hazelhurst, sorry if I'm butchering that name, wrote that there's a lot of DNR stuff that regulates the undersized culverts and is doing a lot of work with the individual towns and counties to get them upsized more.
Mhm.
And also Scott Vanagran kind of added on that thread that he's they're going to discuss at the DNR and find the right person to contact if the water is backing up substantially upstream. So
Mhm.
the looks like some things are rolling.
Okay, that's good.
Then we have another question. Is this presentation something that you folks would be willing to share with other counties and towns? Some are very progressive, but some would really benefit by seeing how to go about evaluating and prioritizing their road crossings.
Well, I think absolutely we will share it because that's really the whole point. It's the more people who look at it and use the information, the better. So again, I think we'll be posting it on our website, and also a recording of this meeting in full.
Yeah, we're definitely happy to share. Okay.
One last question.
Okay.
We were talking about the width of the culverts, particularly the way it looked from the pictures being no more than 30 feet. However, those town roads that cross trout streams have to be a certain width in order to qualify as town roads and get the state funding. What's the alternative to a culvert that's longer than 30 feet? Would that be a bridge?
Well, again, I'm not an engineer, but that's what I would guess is that, the best alternative then it would be a bridge, although I understand they're more costly. I don't know if someone from the DNR,
Well, I can
Yes.
answer that question, Joanne.
okay, thank you, Kita.
Yeah, what they're looking at for those pipes that are longer than 30 feet is that
Mhm,
kind of substrate is in them.
mhm.
So what they're doing when they're putting those bigger or longer pipes in is actually putting a lot more substrate and actually creating little barbs inside. So they're like little reefs of rock, so that
Mhm,
fish can get up and then they get behind the little reef.
mhm.
They wait, they can catch their breath.
Oh,
Or
yeah, so they have a refuge, yeah.
right. And so
Mhm,
they create a lot of those. So you're creating little quiet pools as the stream is flowing through the pipe. So
mhm.
yeah, I mean, when you start looking at the highways, you're looking at least 60, 90 feet.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Thank you very much. That's very
Yeah,
helpful.
thank you, Kita.
Yeah, there's a suggestion of what might be able to help with adding to the survey options.
Yes,
In regards to potential culvert damming concerns, perhaps just a comment or checkbox could be added if there is a significant observed difference in water elevation from upstream compared to downstream.
mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, there is part of the survey, they do ask that question. So that would be incorporated in the survey.
Okay. Is that data that's accessible through this presentation or through the sources where the data is stored?
Yes, through the
Giant?
through the Michigan DNR hub data site. All the data is in there. So like I said, you just find a particular crossing, click on it, and all of the data shows up.
It might be helpful if you have that quickly accessible to copy into the chat.
The
I can't
address.
access it
Oh,
now. I would otherwise.
let me see.
Or
how
maybe you could do it at the end or something.
Okay. I'm not sure how to do that. I might cut myself off.
Yeah, let's not do that. It'll be on the recording.
Okay.
I can go ahead and add a couple comments here, Joanne, if you want to work on that, or
Oh, okay,
I did want to
try.
we're happy to still take questions. So if you do have questions or comments, go ahead and type those in. But I did want to do a little bit of follow up here. The intent was the first and foremost with the grant that we received and the task that we chose to take up was to identify these stream crossings, get some data on each stream crossing, reach out to towns and the owners of the town crossings, those who do the work on them, and to see how we can be of help from a county perspective. And oftentimes that is a financial help, possibly technical help. And that's part of what we're here today doing. We do have a county cost share program where we get funding from the state, and we have helped towns in the past with culverts. I know towns do have a couple of ways to access money. I'm not so familiar with those, but I do know that the county, as well as our conservation committee, is open to working with towns if we have the funding available. And that is a big reason why we wanted to prioritize these stream crossings. It gives us and the towns an idea of what needs some work out there, where the money might be best spent, especially when we're looking at public monies. We want to make sure we're getting the most bang for the buck. So we're working on lowering erosion issues, increasing passability for fish and other organisms, and just giving tools to the towns and trying to connect them up with financing. Oftentimes, some of the issues that Joanne mentioned, where we have perch culverts, that where fish cannot pass through. Oftentimes, the culverts are not aligned with the stream quite as well. So there's little tips and small things that could be done to really help, save some money and be more environmentally friendly to our stream crossings or our streams that are out there. So certainly we urge everyone in the audience to check our website at oclw.org. We'll have this presentation up there. We'll have lots of other information up there as well. And please reach out. I always say, don't be shy. That's what we're here for. We're here to have those conversations and see how we can help anyone that's out there in Oneida County.
And those web pages are in the chat right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see.
Great.
And I'm entering the Michigan database hub address right now. I have to do it manually. I can't leave, I can't minimize because I'm recording, it says.
Are there any other questions or comments? And at this moment, please also speak up if you don't want to do chat.
Okay.
Okay, maybe we don't have any more questions.
Maybe not.
I'm gonna enter our email addresses, just or specifically Joanne's, so that people can get a hold of you.
Okay.
Okay. Joanne, any parting words from your end?
Just that I'm excited to be able to continue this work in the coming season. And we'll, you know, hopefully we'll, I really appreciate feedback from the towns, I guess. And I'm about to post in the chat this address to the database. Thank you, everyone, for your interest and your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne, for such great work that you did. It was it is great to see the data, and really looking forward to 2021 here with a whole bunch of new crossings that we'll be surveying. A little extra that we'll be able to do with the time that we requested. There will be mussel monitoring at each of, I shouldn't say each of those, but there'll be priority sites. We'll be actually monitoring our native mussels, our native clams at those stream crossings. And also a little bit of extra time to reach out to those towns that we did the work on in 2020 to try to connect them up possibly with a partnership or monies, or how we can go ahead and start working on getting some of those problem culverts fixed. And Bearbell, any parting words from our moderator?
No, thanks for coming, everybody. And again, you can access the recording and the presentation of our website and address any questions that may come up still to Joanne. Thanks for coming.
All right, I think we're good. So thank you everyone so much for coming, and please reach out to oclw.org, or you may call 369-7835. Thank you, everyone.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Nice work, Joanne.
Thank you.
I think you can stop the recording.